All right. Well, good evening, everybody, again. Thanks for joining us this evening. We are very lucky to have Caroline Heape joining us. I think some of you, at least, or many of you know Caroline, we are privileged to be working with her at CAW, but she also covers all of the parks and coordinates volunteers. And certainly, if anyone is interested in volunteering, she's definitely somebody to reach out to. And you can certainly be getting volunteer hours for the parks as well as CMNA at the same time. So it's a great double your what you're getting and in terms of working towards your hours for CMNA, but also towards getting support from the parks and it's not quite a reciprocal pass, but a pass that you can utilize to get into the parks. So Caroline grew up in upstate South Carolina, where she became curious about the ocean, but specifically marine mammals. As she pursued her undergraduate degree at Clemson University, she took many marine science courses, which furthered her interest in marine biology. One summer during college, she did a marine mammal training internship at the Gulfarium, I find that a very interesting word, Marine Adventure Park, where she learned about behavior and care for bottlenose dolphins, California sea lions, harbor seals, and Asian small-clawed otters. She also took a week-long course in the Florida Keys that covered bottlenose dolphin veterinary care and anatomy and physiology. After graduating, she pursued a career in interpretation at Mississippi Aquarium, where she took the knowledge she gained about marine mammals and applied it through teaching others about them. Wanting to be closer to home, she moved to Charleston, where she worked at South Carolina Aquarium for 3 years as an interpreter. During her time at the aquarium, she was introduced to Pat Fair and began working on the Charleston Harbor Dolphin project, sorting and labeling photos for dolphin dorsal fins, which she is still doing. She eventually was able to go on boat trips where she collected data and took photos, and now she is the co-investigator for this project and is the main photographer and data collector. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce and turn it over to Carolyn, and thank you again for joining us this evening. And she's, of course, a master naturalist as well and went to the course a year ago now. So, yes. Okay. Thanks, Carolyn. Take it away.
Yeah, thanks. I am so excited to see everyone. And I think I've met most of you, but hopefully you learn a little bit more about marine mammals today and also Saturday if y'all come Saturday. And yeah, I'll just get started. Am I, is my screen still sharing? I guess let me pull this up. All right, is it good, Nikki?
We don't see a screen share yet, Caroline.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Let me try again. I had this down and then it went away.
It's always harder when you have to.
All right.
You got it.
Perfect. Okay. Great. So just to start off, Nikki did a great introduction, but I have some photos of some of those things that I wanted to share, and then do a broad overview of marine mammals, then South Carolina specific marine mammals, and then a quick dive into some natural history for our two most common ones, and then some marine mammal conservation topics. Yes.
I hate to bother you, but I'm seeing a blurred screen. Is it just me or is it others?
Oh,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Same thing.
it's blurry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it
just
says click
yep.
yeah, there.
Now we
That's
can see.
ooh,
Yep.
that's
Is that better?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
It won't be full screen. Is that okay?
That's okay. We can see it.
Okay.
It's all good.
Okay.
Yeah.
um, let's see if I can zoom in. Okay. Sorry about that. So yeah, just a few things. Nikki mentioned me doing a marine mammal internship. So here's some photos of that with some of the different dolphins that I worked with. And then my obsession with belugas. Belugas are my favorite whale or my favorite animal overall. And this is me in Canada kayaking with belugas. Um, and yeah, just some fun things. I learned a lot about marine mammal behavior in human care and was able to really just learn how animals interact with each other and with us. And it helps a lot with the stuff I do now, which is this photo here. So working for the county parks, I get to go out and take the dolphin skull and go to the pier or to the beach and tell people about animals and dolphins, which I love. And I'm just excited to talk to y'all today about my favorite animals. And then this is the Charleston Dolphin Project, which Nikki mentioned that I'm a part of as a photographer. So we go out in the Charleston Harbor and are taking photos of the dorsal fin, which is like our fingerprint. It's 99% different between each individual dolphin. So we take those and we can go through them on different databases, and they kind of get like a number assigned to them, and we can tell what individuals are in the harbor. So we get up at the Wando terminal, which is where these photos are, and we look at them up next to the ships, but we also just do like the mouth of the harbor in front of the aquarium and so forth, and are studying individuals and also like population sizes for those individual or like those areas in the harbor. So really fun project. And again, I get to kind of use the knowledge I had from marine mammals and human care now out in the field doing dolphin research. But just briefly about me, I'm going to get to the animals. But it's just a fun thing to talk about. And yeah. So then I wanted to start as like a broad overview of marine mammals. So around the world, what's out there as far as marine mammals go? The first order, so these are all orders. There's 5 main orders of marine mammals. The first one is cetaceans. So that's our dolphins and our whales and porpoises. Cetaceans, there's about 14 families in this order and 2 suborders and about 90 species total. So that's really our biggest one. And so cetaceans are going to make up the majority of what we call marine mammals. Then we have pinnipeds. So that's our seals, our sea lions, our walruses. Of course, we don't have any pinnipeds in South Carolina, but this is just an overview. There's 3 families and about 30 species total of pinnipeds. Next is Sirenia, and that's our manatees and our dugongs, which we do have here, the manatees in South Carolina, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But there's only 2 families and 4 species of Sirenia. Next is mustelids, and they're kind of a funny one. We really only have 1 species around the world that is considered marine, which is the sea otters, which you could see out west in the Pacific and in Alaska. But there's 8 subfamilies and about 70 species of mustelids, but only 1 to 3 are considered marine. This is a river otter, which we do have in South Carolina that come in the marshes, so they might be considered marine. It just depends on who you ask. And then finally we have Ursa, which is our bears. And there's 8 species of bear, but there's only 1 that's considered marine, which is the polar bear. And so it's really fun to kind of look at the breakdown of those. I love peppermint narwhal. If you've ever seen their stuff, this is like a little graphic from them that tells you, kind of breaks down that a little bit more. But that's a general overview of these marine mammal species. Also, I don't want to just like fire hose y'all with information. So if you have any questions throughout the thing, let me know.
It's great. It's cute. Caroline Heape on species of marine mammals.
Whoever is not muted, if you could mute, that would be great. Thank you so much.
But yeah, if you have any questions, just throw them in like little chat, and Nikki can let me know since I can't see it, and just let me know so I'm not just talking the whole time too. But yeah, so that's an overall thing of marine mammals for the whole world, but let's break it down a little more for South Carolina, since that's our own backyard here in Charleston. First, we're going to talk about offshore species briefly. I don't know as much about some of these species, but I'll just give you a brief little like nuggets of information for them. So we have kind of five major offshore marine mammal species: the pygmy sperm whale, the long-finned pilot whale, the humpback whale, the bottlenose dolphin, and then the North Atlantic right whale. So some of these you really would only see if you're like going deep sea fishing, like 60 miles off the coast. You're going to see them also maybe washed up on the beaches, which we'll talk a little bit about later. But these are kind of like more rare ones, especially the pygmy sperm whale, the pilot whale, and then the humpback in North Atlantic. We'll talk about the dolphin in a second. But but we know that these are off of our coast because of studies. We actually have a group of people, not through my research team, but there are some researchers that go up in planes and helicopters and go up and down the coast and look for some of these whales through their spouts and when they come up for air. So we know a little bit about that. If you've ever been to the aquarium, one of my favorite things that I used to do at the aquarium was get the humpback whale rib bone and vertebrae and bring it out and talk about the humpback whales off of our coast. So, and then finally, our right whales are critically endangered. So they're actually our state migratory marine mammal. And so we claim those as like one of our state symbols. But the right whales are declining in numbers. There's only about, I think, like 200 to 300 left in the whole world. So very, endangered species that we talked about. And then our dolphins. So our bottlenose dolphins, I'm going to get into this a little bit more, but dolphins, we have two species in South Carolina. We have our offshore species, which migrates off of our coast. They kind of stay more out in open ocean, and that is Tursiops truncatus or truncatus, and that's the like migratory like offshore bottlenose dolphin. So that's a little bit about our offshore species. Now we're going to go a little closer to home with our estuarine or nearshore species of marine mammals. So I mentioned the bottlenose dolphin. We also have Tamanins bottlenose dolphin, or Tursiops arabenus is their scientific name. And that's our like inshore species that stays here year round. They don't migrate away. We have maybe about 300 to 400 individuals that do stay in our estuaries in South Carolina. So that is recently divided taxonomically. So that used to be all thinking they were the same species, bottlenose dolphin, and then they split, I think, 3 years ago to be two different species. So that is kind of a newer thing. We're still studying about what that means, but for now, we'll say that's the Tamanins bottlenose dolphin. We also have the Florida manatee. So we mentioned manatees earlier. We have the subspecies of the West Indian manatee, the Florida manatee, off of our coast. Then we also have North American river otters. And as I mentioned, it's like, are they a marine mammal? Kind of. They do go into our estuaries and our marine systems. I've seen them in the harbor before. So they're kind of a marine mammal. And then same for our minks. So this is another mustelid that we do have in our salt marsh, the American mink. Related to the otter. They're really cute if you ever get to see them out in the marsh. So now I wanted to take a moment for the porpoise because a lot of people, and I think it's more of like a colloquial term, or like we just grew up saying everything that looked like a dolphin or porpoise was just a porpoise. So I hear a lot of older fishermen calling dolphins porpoises. So I just wanted to clarify what a porpoise is and what that looks like compared to our bottlenose dolphins. So here in South Carolina, we do not have porpoises. As you can see, their range is quite different. Porpoise, which is, we're referring to a harbor porpoise, is the specific species that we're talking about. Harbor porpoises are found on the West Coast, all the way up to Alaska, and then on our East Coast, but it stops just like shy of South Carolina. So I'm sure occasionally they might come down here for some weird reason, but it would be very rare. They don't like our warmer water, and they prefer cool water. And this is like a little picture of them as well. So a little drawing of what a harbor porpoise looks like compared to our bottlenose dolphin. Second, after range, the difference between the two is their beak and their size. So their beak is that like their rostrum, their nose area. So dolphins have this long bottle-shaped nose, where porpoises have this blunt and rounded nose. So that's another difference. Also, their size. Dolphins are much larger. We'll go over the specific size of what our bottlenose dolphins can get up to in a little bit. Porpoises tend to be much smaller and more compact than dolphins. Also, their fin is different. So bottlenose dolphins have more of this like curved, larger dorsal fin, where porpoises have a short and smaller one. And then finally, their teeth are a little different, which is interesting. Porpoise teeth are flat or like spade shaped, and then dolphin teeth are cone and like sharp and pointed. So just wanted to clarify that. We do not have porpoises in South Carolina. What you're seeing is most likely a bottlenose dolphin. So I wanted to go now more specifically into the two most common marine mammals that we have in South Carolina that you're most likely to see unless you go way offshore. So that is our manatee and our bottlenose dolphin. So first we'll start with the West Indian manatee. So West Indian manatee is kind of like the broad one that includes like all of the like Caribbean, the one that hangs out in this part of the world. But then we have specifically the Florida manatee, which is a subspecies. So when I first moved to Charleston, I didn't realize manatees came up this high. So I was pleasantly surprised when I was working at the aquarium that I was able to see manatees in the harbor swimming right under the aquarium, which is this picture in the bottom left. There's actually two manatees in here. There's one behind this one as well. So manatees are, of course, some people call them a sea cow. They are herbivores. They're just going to eat seagrasses, which Charleston's great for that. There's all kinds of vegetation that they can chew on. They have really cool teeth. And I should have put a picture of it on here, but so similar to sharks, how they constantly are replacing their teeth, manatees also constantly replace their teeth, but they do it in a different way. It's like a conveyor belt from the back to the front. So it's all molars, and they will gradually lose their teeth, but they move forward and then fall out the front. And that's just because they're constantly munching on stuff. So they need to keep their molars nice and sharp. But really interesting that they do that. They don't have any natural predators, which is interesting, but they are considered vulnerable because of human-caused threats. So boat strikes is like the #1 for that. I put these two maps here because I think they're interesting. This one on the upper left is from 2016. It's a manatee they named Goose, and he, because probably he went all the way up to like Goose Creek. And it's just interesting to watch this like pattern, how they like went all the way up into the estuaries and the rivers and then all the way back down. So they're definitely around. This is another great map. They like warmer water, so they're going to be here in the summertime, the spring and summer when it is warmer out. Sometimes they do get trapped in the cooler water if it cools too quickly in the fall, and they'll have to be rescued. There's been several stories where SeaWorld had to come out, and DNR, of course, was in that, and they were able to help the manatees get to warmer waters and get rehabilitated. But what's really interesting is that I feel like the manatees, there's even a map in this map, like they go all the way up to the northeast. And I think that's because there is a lot of buildings now, like factories and nuclear stations, where they're taking the water and cooling off the reactors and then putting that warm water back in. And the manatees are drawn to that, just like they are in the springs in Florida, where it's warmer and they're able to hang out there for longer periods of time. So we've kind of created this nice environment for them to come and eat and hang out and stay warm, which is really interesting. But it's cool to have them around. So hopefully, if you've never seen a manatee before, they should be leaving now, unless they want to get trapped here and get too cold. But they might still be around. I know, like I said, these two are in the harbor. I know this year at Fort Johnson in the boat slip there was some manatees too. So keep your eye out for manatees. Next is our bottlenose dolphins. So from here on out, I'm going to refer to dolphins as bottlenose dolphins, or just, even though there's like those two species I was talking about, I'm going to lump them together because their natural history and their behaviors are pretty much the same, except for a few small things. And so I'm just going to put them all together in one group just for clarity and for ease, because like I said, they just split them recently. So a lot of these things are very similar for both of those species. So dolphins are in the family Delphinidae, and they're pretty much like a small toothed whale. They're related to killer whales. They're related to belugas. So they are really interesting species. Bottlenose dolphins can get about 8 to 9 feet long, and then about 400 to 600 pounds. So they're pretty large, but they're smaller compared to some of those other ones that we talked about offshore. Also, our nearshore dolphins, those estuary dolphins, are going to be a little bit smaller than the ones that are like migrating off of our coast, which is probably why they split them, because they're a little morphologically different. Their sexual maturity is reached at 7 to 10 years old, so fairly quickly for some of these animals to reach that, especially because they stay with their moms sometimes up to 3 years. Breeding is seasonal, but they can actually breed year-round if they wanted to, but they tend to prefer the springtime. And if you spend enough time on the water, you might actually see this behavior, and it's really interesting to see that play out. And then gestation is 12 months, so it is a full year for their gestation. So at the same time that one dolphin might be breeding, another female dolphin might be calving and giving birth to a calf. So it's kind of cyclical like that. And then, like I said, sometimes those calves stay with their mom for like 2 to 3 years, depending on what's going on. And then they can begin eating fish at like 6 to 7 months. Before that, they're going to eat or drink milk from their mother's mammary glands. And I'm not going over a lot about that process. I was going to talk about more of that on Saturday. So maybe that will entice you to come when we talk about some of the mammal side of these marine mammals. But so this is the range of the bottlenose dolphins. And this is really talking about like the Tursiops truncatus. They have a very wide range. They just don't like to be in super cold environments. As you can tell, they're kind of in this like temperate region around the world. And then, of course, the estuary dolphins come into the harbor and into our rivers and estuaries, salt marsh. I put this up here because of the how I was talking about how the dorsal fins are pretty much 99% different. This is one dolphins and how it's changed over time, which is also interesting. These little marks on here are called rake marks. Those are from each other's teeth, which is a way that they communicate, which is also how sometimes these dorsal fins get certain like nicks in them from each other throughout the years, and it's a great way to identify individual dolphins. And then this is a dolphin giving birth. Dolphins are born tail first, which I also think is so interesting, that it helps them to not drown. So since they're giving birth in the water, they go tail first, and their mom will turn around and like push them up to the surface to get their first breath. So let's see. So a little bit more natural history about the bottlenose dolphin. And I'm spending so much time on them because, like I said earlier, this is like the one that everyone's going to get to see. If you spend any time at the beach or in the water at all, you're most likely going to see a dolphin. And so I wanted to give y'all more information about what you're going to see the most. But so what do they eat? They eat all kinds of fish. Their favorite, this is a mullet. And then you can see this one going after a flounder. They also will play with their fish. So this one's like tossing the flounder around. If you've ever watched any documentary about orcas, you can also see that they kind of play around with their prey. Dolphins are related, so they also will play with their fish and toss it around a little bit. Sometimes they're also seen eating octopus or squid. They have a varying diet, but they swallow everything whole. And we'll talk about their teeth in just a little bit. And then how they do that is really neat. Dolphins have developed in different areas around the world different hunting tactics to catch their prey. Some of them kind of circle fish and push them up against a barrier of some sort. That's called barrier feeding. And I have two here that I'll talk about. Some of them also will use tools. This upper one here has a sponge in its mouth, and it uses that sponge to like spook fish on the bottom and then catch the fish. So they've developed a way to use tools and also use things around them like barriers to catch these fish. So this top one is actually was discovered by my research team. This is called ship-side feeding. So this is a cargo carrier ship in the Wando terminal, and this dolphin has developed a way where he can push fish, or they can push fish up against the ship and then catch them and swallow them whole, and are able to just kind of pin the fish up against these ships that are docked in the harbor. Sometimes they will do it together. Sometimes it'll be an individual teaching a young one. But it's a really cool newer behavior that we have discovered through doing population studies on this group of dolphins. And then down here is more of a famous one for our area, which is the strand feeding. So it's another type of barrier feeding where they're using the beach or some kind of land to corral the fish and then push them up on the beach, grab the fish, and then wiggle back down into the water. This one looks like it missed the fish. It's right behind its pectoral flipper. But yeah, so really cool behavior, only seen here and like one other place in Georgia. So very special to have that in Charleston. And even at one of our county parks at Beachwalker is like the best place to see it. So yeah, I hope you get to see that one day because it's amazing. But these are just a handful of ways that dolphins hunt for their food. But I think they're like the coolest ways. And then how do they do that? So just briefly, echolocation is so complicated, but it's one of the coolest things. So dolphins make all kinds of noises. They even have what they call a signature whistle, which is it's given to them at birth, and it's how they recognize their moms, and the moms recognize their young, and they have that signature whistle the rest of their lives. But they also make all kinds of clicks and whistles, and even that like flipper sound from the old TV show. And they use those sounds to communicate with each other, but also to echolocate. So what they do is all those sounds come out of their blowhole, and when they make those sounds, it goes out and bounces off of a fish, or if they're swimming around some kind of structure like a coral reef, it'll bounce off of that, and it comes back through their lower jaw. So their lower jaw has like fat-filled like pores that can actually like transmit that sound, and then it goes through a complicated process to their brain, and their melon, and it is processed, and they can tell, how big something is, how far away it is, and are able to, adjust their behavior according to what bounces back to them. And I put this little thing here called tooth tunes because when I was growing up, I had this toothbrush, and you would brush your teeth, and when you held it out here, it would play music, but you couldn't really hear it. But when you were brushing your teeth, you could actually hear it through the bottom part of your jaw. And so it's kind of like a good visual of how that works. It kind of goes straight directly into their inner ear, and that's what was happening with this toothbrush. Is when you're brushing, the sound was emitted through your jaw to your ear, and just a really cool kind of connection there with echolocation. We also have some other behavioral adaptations. So dolphins have, well, all animals, we have like the behavioral adaptations and then the anatomical adaptations. So we're just going to go over a few of those things. I don't know if you've ever thought about how dolphins sleep. I know I often think about how marine mammals or any marine animal sleeps, because what a harsh environment to have to figure out, like, oh, is there a predator at any moment? Like all of these things, especially for dolphins, because they have to breathe too. So dolphins are what we call conscious breathers. So we don't have to think about when we take a breath. Luckily, our brain just does that for us. We don't have to think about it, but dolphins have to think about every breath they take. They consciously take breaths. So whenever they're sleeping, what they'll do is close one side of their brain off at a time. It's called unihemispheric slow wave sleep. And so this is what these dolphins here are doing. So they have one eye closed, one half of their brain is off, and they continue swimming, but in a slower, more methodical way. And they continue to come up and take a breath because their other eye's open and the other half of their brain is still working. So not only to take a breath, but also to look out for predators too. But mostly that, like, conscious breathing is why they do this USWS sleep. And then this is talking about buoyancy. So if you've ever scuba dived or scuba dove, however you say that, I know when I have buoyancy is like the worst thing. Trying to stay neutrally buoyant to the water is really difficult, and you're trying to get that neutral buoyancy. Dolphins don't have that much of a hard time with that. They have adapted really well to stay buoyant and be able to go up and down. And they mostly do that with their lungs. So if you've ever scuba as well, you know that you have your BCD, which can inflate and deflate, but you also kind of go up and down when you breathe in and breathe out. And that's the same for the dolphins. So they kind of can adjust their buoyancy with their lungs, and they can let out a little air, or they'll go up and get more air, and they can maintain buoyancy that way. I know these dolphins are amazing. So a little bit about their behaviors as well. So if you've ever been in the harbor, you might have seen them, what we call bow riding. Bow riding is when, and they might have done this to your small boat as well, but it's really cool to see them do this off of the, like, cargo ships. They get right in front of the boat, right off the bow, and they will actually just jump up over the, like, wake before the boat comes to them. It's amazing to watch this because it's like, oh my gosh, it looks like they're going to get hit. They never knew. They know what they're doing. It has thought to be a behavior to help them travel faster, but it also, I mean, a lot of the dolphins that are doing this are in the harbor, and they are residents of the harbor, so they don't really need to travel fast anyway. We think probably they're just doing it for fun, to jump up and to have fun, which is really a cool thing. The next one over here to the right is just them coming up for air. So I mentioned a little bit about how they're conscious breathers. I have a picture in a second of their blowhole, but I think traditionally, and some of y'all might still have this perception because of Flipper and other dolphin movies and shows. Everyone used to think, or maybe still does think, that the water like shoots out of their blowhole, like they can squirt water out of their blowhole. But actually, that's just water coming off the top of their blowhole. So their blowhole actually has like a flap on top, so they don't, take in water every time they dive down. So there's like a seal over their blowhole, and so that seal has water on top when they're coming up out of the water to breathe, and they'll actually blow first. So they'll blow out and then breathe in, and that like spray that you see is actually them just getting the water off the top of their blowhole, so they don't suck it in. So that's just a little picture of that behavior there. And then also breaching. Dolphins nearshore and offshore will breach. Sometimes it might be to get off parasites. I also know that pregnant dolphins will breach to kind of help like get the birth going. When they're ready to calve, they will breach a few times and hopefully do that. Maybe that's like walking or bouncing on the ball when you're ready to give birth, trying to get that baby out. And then they also maybe also do this for fun. So you might see dolphins breach for several different reasons, but I've seen them do this in Folly River before. It just depends on what's going on in that dolphin's life at the moment. And yeah, so just a few behavioral adaptations. There's so many more. Dolphins are so complex with their social behavior, and I'm hoping that on Saturday too we can see some dolphin behavior and maybe describe what's going on. So now I'm gonna kind of transition into some anatomy of dolphins, because I love anatomy and physiology. That was my favorite couple of classes at Clemson. So we're just gonna talk briefly. They're very complex again. So I'm just gonna go over a few things that make marine mammals so interesting, because they are living in they're air-breathing mammals that live in a very harsh marine world. So we'll go over a few of these things. I mentioned their teeth earlier. They're cone-shaped. Dolphins can have about 80 to 100 teeth, and they only have one set their whole life. So they don't replace their teeth like manatees or sharks or alligators. They keep their teeth. When they're born, they don't get any other teeth, which is really interesting. But as I mentioned, they also don't chew their food. They swallow it all whole. So they're really only using their teeth to grab a hold of fish and then swallow it, or to communicate with each other with their teeth. This is a picture I wanted to show the melon, which is this rounded forehead that dolphins are known for. And that melon is a jelly-filled sac that helps them with echolocation. And I briefly mentioned that earlier. So that little melon, if you ever get a chance to interact with a marine mammal at an aquarium, and you get to touch their melon while they are vocalizing, it actually moves, which is really funny. You can kind of feel that jelly. Their eyes, they do have eyelids. Like I mentioned, they can close one of their eyes when they're sleeping. And they have specialized lenses that can deal with the pressure under the water. They do see color. They have rods and cones in their eyes, just like we do, so they can see pretty well. And then what's also fun is this tiny little pinhole right here is their ear. That's their external ear, which I don't think does a lot compared to the echolocation system that they have, but they do have a tiny little ear. So that's a little bit about dolphin eyes. This is their blowhole. This is it open. Like I said before, there is like a little like valve that closes over it, so they're not constantly sucking in water whenever they're diving. So a little bit more complex. I always am thinking of like, how do animals process salt, right? So they are in this marine environment. If you know a lot about sea turtles, they actually cry when they're on land because they're excreting salt. So they have salt glands as reptiles. Whereas marine mammals, they're not drinking the salt water. They're not just like gulping down the salt water, but they do consume it. They consume the fish, which is where they get kind of their like fresh water from, is their fish. And they have to process that salt somehow. And that is with their kidneys. So dolphins have this really special type of kidney. So the one on our left, this is what our kidney looks like. This is like kidney bean shape. There's these little things. I won't go super into an anatomy lesson here, but very simple kidney. We drink fresh water. It doesn't have to do that much, but they're still super important, as I'm sure you know. But then the dolphin's kidney is like having like 9 or 10 like tiny kidneys in one. So it goes through this filtration, and each little lobe is like one of our kidneys. So they have this specialized kidney that helps them to process that salt out of their bodies. Their stomach is interesting as well. They actually have a you can look at it as like 3 or 4 chambered stomach. So similar to cows. Cows have multiple chambers of their stomach. We just have one, and it helps them to process their food. So they're swallowing it whole. They've got all these fish bones and things to break down. So they have the forestomach, their main stomach, and then their pyloric and duodenal stomach. So all of those do different things to break down those whole fish. So there's like the forestomach's a holding chamber. The main stomach is where most of that breakdown goes. And then there's just extra steps involved to break down all of the different bones and things. And then finally, this picture here is to show their camouflage. So most marine animals, if you think about sharks, otters as well, manatees, dolphins, they have something called counter shading. It's a type of camouflage where they are darker on the back and then lighter on the belly. And this is because when they're swimming through the water column, if a predator is looking down at the dolphin, they're going to blend in with the bottom of the seafloor where it's dark. And if there's a predator looking up, their white or lighter colored belly is going to blend in with the sun shining down on the ocean's surface. So just a little counter shading helps with that. Or even if they're hunting and their prey doesn't really see them that well either. So yeah, cool little camouflage called counter shading for the dolphins. So now we're going to talk about the conservation of marine mammals. So conservation statuses first, and then a little bit about the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and then what we can do to help dolphins. So bottlenose dolphins are considered least concern. So this is all according to the IUCN Red List, which is where there's different ways that they gather information to determine what the population size is, and it even tells you on this website like if it is an increasing population or a decreasing population. So bottlenose dolphins, both species are what we consider least concern, which means their populations are stable. They're not really decreasing or increasing currently, and there's not any, reason to be alarmed about their population size. Bottlenose dolphins are very important species, especially in our harbor. There's 2 different terms that we can call as far as like ecological terms. One is called an umbrella species. An umbrella species is a species that is kind of a charismatic species that conserving or taking care of that species will actually kind of umbrella or cover more species that maybe aren't as charismatic or just exciting for people. I know we're all master naturalists, so we care about even the plankton in the water, but sometimes conservation efforts need a little more push than that. So dolphins are considered an umbrella. So if we protect dolphins and their ecosystem, we're protecting Spartina, we're protecting oysters, blue crabs, all of these other very important species. Dolphins also are considered what we call sentinel species. So a sentinel is like a guard, and the original sentinel species would be like the canary in the coal mine. So it's kind of like an indicator species, if you've ever heard of that. Indicator species, though, are like indicating the ecosystem is maybe not doing great, or indicating that the animals are surrounding this other animal or species are maybe declining, where sentinel species directly can tell us how human health might be affected based on this species' health. So, like I said, the canary in the coal mine, where they would take the canary in, and if the canary died or passed out, they knew maybe there was too much carbon monoxide in the mine and they needed to get out. Bottlenose dolphins are also considered sentinel species because if they are having different diseases or impacts from water quality in the harbor, then that's also affecting humans and maybe what we eat out of that water as well. So they might be least concerned, but they are a species to look to kind of look at the whole ecosystem health as a whole. Humpback whales are also least concern off of our coast, at least our population. I mentioned this earlier, North Atlantic right whales are critically endangered. So I actually gave them more credit. I said like 300. There's only 200 and 250 individuals left in the whole world. So they are a species that conservationists are looking to pass more laws for about boat strikes and things like that. Pygmy sperm whales are least concerned, and long-finned pilot whales are least concerned. And then the Florida manatee is vulnerable, and their populations are actually increasing. They actually were considered endangered just a few years ago, and then taken off the endangered species list and then put as a vulnerable state. So hoping that they're going to continue to rise up to least concern one day. All of these marine mammals are protected under the Marine Mammal Protection Act, which came out in 1972. And that act says that, you need to stay like 50 yards away from the animals, not approach them, not take, which means touch, feed, harass, approach, any of those things. So this is just like a little warning sign that outlines some of that, but this is also the NOAA number. If you ever see someone doing one of those things, I've called this in the harbor before when I've watched people from the aquarium trying to touch dolphins or chase them around in a boat. And yeah, so it's not just to protect the animals, but also to protect humans, because they can sometimes be dangerous too. But it is illegal to do any of those things. And we just want to protect our marine mammals from any harm, and which now we'll talk about some of the threats that they face. So I like to break down threats to animals in like natural occurring things and then anthropogenic or human caused threats. So first, natural. Dolphins and other marine mammals, this affects all of them, but they can have diseases. This one has a skin condition. I don't remember exactly which disease this is, but I've seen dolphins on our surveys have similar looking skin, and we're trying to figure out what that's from. Predators. Some of these marine mammals don't really have a lot of predators in South Carolina, but I feel like for dolphins, sharks, when they're calving, is probably the largest predator for them. Harmful algal blooms, that's what HAB stands for, harmful algal blooms, can affect them because it's affecting what they eat, like the fish and things like that. Storms, so large storms and flooding, like the really, really high tides like we're going to have tonight, can affect our marine mammals. Climate change can kind of displace them, or like I said with the manatees, if the weather, doesn't change when they're typically used to moving on, it can affect how long they stay somewhere, and then maybe they get stuck there. And then prey distribution along with climate change. So maybe they're looking for a certain fish and it's not migrating with them, or yeah, so just some natural threats there. Anthropogenic threats, on the other hand, are actually more likely for our marine mammals. Boat strikes is probably the number one for dolphins, for whales off the coast, and for manatees. And we'll talk about like how to mitigate some of these threats. So we're not one of the threats out there. We're helping them instead. But boat strikes, entanglement in nets, and marine debris, ingestion of plastics and marine debris, runoff, and just like harmful chemicals running off into the water, which is happening more with our dolphins now. And then habitat loss, overfishing, and noise pollution, especially for those dolphins and whales that are echolocating. Noise pollution can be very hindering to their communication. I did mention, or I wanted to mention earlier about the manatees, to remind y'all not to like water manatees. A lot of people will leave out a hose and give them fresh water. Manatees know where to get fresh water on their own, whether it's up a river or in a spring, and they know how to get fresh water sources. It's actually kind of detrimental to them to give them fresh water through a hose off of a dock or off of a boat, because that teaches them to approach those areas where boat traffic is higher, and it can lead them to get hit by the boats. Same with dolphins, like in this picture, if we teach them that boats mean food or that people mean food, then they're more likely to approach those. And I have met a beggar dolphin before on our surveys, and those beggar dolphins will, just like the name suggests, will pop right up and open their mouth just like you're at like an aquarium, and they will ask for food and become a nuisance. And then this particular dolphin has actually taught his friends about it as well, because they're so smart and they teach each other everything. So just a little thing about that. So the best thing we can do is be dolphin smart. So it's a little acronym. We love the acronyms here in CMNA. So be dolphin smart. So stay 50 yards away. I had to put my little Clemson Tiger football field here. So 50 yards is half a football field, if you can visualize it that way. Try to stay 50 yards away. And what I say, like, dolphins often like can get a little closer to boats. That's where some of these other ones come into play. So move away cautiously if dolphins show sign of disturbance. So down here I have a dolphin doing what we call a tail smack, and that is like a sure sign of a dolphin being very irritated. If you see a tail smack, then they're definitely disturbed. They don't want you around. So try to like move away from them slowly and cautiously, especially if they have young around, and they're getting a little testy about that. Always put your engine in neutral when dolphins are near. This kind of plays into that 50 yards away. Like, put your engine in neutral if you want to sit around and watch the dolphins. That's great. Just make sure that your engine's in neutral, and then if they get closer than 50 yards away, then just kind of hang out and let them do their thing until they move away, and then you can move on. You just don't want them to, be too close and get hit. Refrain from swimming with, touching, or feeding the dolphins. Yeah, it just teaches them that we're okay to be around. We want them, kind of like gators, to be as scared of us as they can be, and to view us as like a neutral thing that doesn't reward them in any way. So they are super smart and will pick up on things. And like I said, with our beggar dolphin, he will teach his other people. Moms will teach their babies, and it just won't be good. And then, of course, teach others, which I know all of y'all are super great at teaching others about animals and about conservation. And then that was kind of like the gist of all of the information, but I wanted to give y'all some resources about marine mammals that I rely on a lot. And so here's a few things. This bottlenose dolphin book is one of the best ones I've ever read. It's just like all inclusive, like biology, conservation, really cool, just specific bottlenose dolphin book. These other two books I have on my shelf at home, and they're really great. They have great illustrations and photos and really break down the natural history of all kinds of marine mammals, and then whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And then the Low Country Marine Mammal Network website is a great local resource specifically to our dolphins and the marine mammals around here. They do stranding response. They're a great place to volunteer for. You can either be a stranding response volunteer, where you can go out and respond to stranded marine mammals across the coast, all the way from the northern coast, like or up in Myrtle Beach, all the way down to Hilton Head and beyond, and around here as well. And I volunteered for them for a little while. It's really cool. Got to do a necropsy, which is like an animal autopsy on a calf, bottlenose dolphin calf, and yeah, just learn a little bit more about their anatomy and why some of them strand, and it's really cool. Or if you don't want to do all the gory, bloody stranding stuff, they also have education volunteers. We can go out and educate about the strand feeding on Kiowa and Seabrook. So really cool source. Their website's also awesome to learn more about our local dolphins. But yeah, that is kind of all the things I have for today. But there's so much more to cover about dolphins, about marine mammals. And so come join us for the walk and talk. And we have a fun game planned. We're going to talk a little bit more. But with that, I would like to see if there was any questions. And thank y'all so much for joining and listening to me just blab on about like one of the things I'm the most passionate about. But thank y'all so much.
Thank you, Caroline. That was amazing. I definitely learned a lot. So I feel like you found things like, people talk about dolphins and marine mammals a lot, but like things that I had not heard before. And so you're up close and experience with them, I think really came through. So thank you for that. So I will open, if anyone just wants to jump in and unmute and ask a question, we have a few minutes to do that. That would be great. If not, if you want to put it in the chat, I'm happy to read those too.
Hi, Caroline. My name's Betty, and I have several questions. I don't want to hog it here, but about dolphins. And the first one was, I was really surprised that that the boat strikes were like a number one problem, and it made me think they're so fast when they swim, such agile swimmers. They don't move out of the way. They're not able to move out of the way of boats.
Yeah, that's a great question. So they are fast. They can actually swim in very short bursts up to 25 miles an hour, but most of the time they're kind of cruising around like 6 or 7 miles an hour. So I think most of the boat strikes are coming from when dolphins have been fed and used to people, and then they're like, hey, that boat is supposed to feed me. And then that's when the boat strikes happen. So yeah, that's a great question though, because they are fast, and you think they're so smart too, and they know they know what's going on, and they bow ride so much, that you think they would get out of the way. But yeah, sometimes I guess just they get used to the boats and they don't realize that it can hurt them. Yeah.
Wow. Well, the other thing, thanks for that. Besides the tail smack, are there any other signs of disturbance that we could recognize if someone's getting too close? Anything else besides the tail smack?
Yeah. So they that's kind of like the biggest thing that I've seen, even when we're doing research on them and we have permits to get a little closer. That's usually the first thing that they'll do is just smack their tail on the top of the water. But that also just like them, fleeing very fast, which is what we want them to do. But a lot of like some people might like try to chase them. So I feel like that's just one of the reasons that that is on that Dolphin Smart list. Is it's like, okay, if they're like moving away from you, then let them and let them go. Don't try to pursue them in any way. But yeah, I think that's really the only things off the top of my head that I can think of that would be signs of like irritation.
Okay, thanks. And my
Yeah.
last one about dolphins. How does one recognize breeding behaviors in dolphins?
Yeah, so breeding is kind of chaotic, honestly. They will usually be at the surface of the water, flailing around, lots of splashing, and oftentimes you will see the male parts just up on top of the surface, flinging around and things. So it's actually quite intense. And usually males will breed with multiple females in one area. And yeah, so breeding behavior is a lot of splashing, and if you see any genitalia, then that means it's probably breeding. Yeah.
So no kind of courtship dance or anything ahead of time.
No, they're don't tend to like do any courtship behavior. They're very like quick just to like breed and then move on.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a great question though, because I mean, they're so intelligent that you would think there's like a little more input to who they choose, but it's more of like a just everyone kind of thing.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I was
Yeah,
gonna
thank you.
say, I don't know if you can hear me. I don't know. I'm not very good at Zoom. But years ago, speaking of what you were asking, it was shocking because um, I had gone on a boat ride to, I think it was like the Folly Lighthouse, and just a boat ride there with a friend. And we saw this like churning of the water near the lighthouse on Folly, churning and churning, and we didn't know what it was. And when we got closer, we saw pink things.
Uh-huh.
And it was like it was dolphins, and they were not shy. There were male dolphins churning around, maybe with females. It
Mm,
was really something I've never seen in all my life, and I've lived in a lot of different places and countries, and it was like, wow, it was quite, you know,
yeah.
shocking, I'll say.
Yes. Yes, it is. And that's exactly it. There's a lot of splashing and churning of the water, and then you see that and you're like, oh, that's what they're doing. It's
Uh,
usually that like spring and summertime that's happening. So yeah, it's cool that you
yeah,
got to see it though. Not like you said, it's an interesting thing to see.
it was extremely embarrassing because, I was like on a date. I was just like, all right, I'm out of here.
Yes.
Like so embarrassing.
That
But really, it was quite something. I have never seen anything like it before. And I never knew that. And I've seen dolphin my whole life, but I've never seen this behavior. And it was
Mhm.
really pretty amazing,
Yeah,
so beautiful that
it is.
we have
Yeah.
that wild you know, we have dolphin here, right in this, it's becoming pretty, uh, urban here, but
Yeah.
still we have, I mean, this was years ago, but I hope we still have this kind of behavior happening off the coast.
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
sure do. There's little I being out on the boat and watching for them, I have seen multiple neonate dolphins this summer, so those brand new babies. And so that's been really cool. So they're definitely still doing that.
I
And
love
we got
that.
new
So
little
what
babies.
about
I,
this?
I'm just
Isn't
gonna, I'm
there a
sorry,
new
Kate.
species?
Kate, I'm just going to barge in for 1 second. I just want to just respect everyone's time. It's a little after 8. If Caroline's okay, we'll hold on, but I just want to say if anyone needs to get off, that's totally understandable. Okay, my apologies, Kate. Go ahead.
My only question was, I don't know, I had read back maybe a year ago that there is now a new species of, is it a porpoise or a dolphin or what? Uh, do you know anything about that?
Yeah, I mentioned that briefly earlier, but maybe we didn't explain it super well. So, about 3 years ago, there was a paper published locally with some different colleagues that I know, and they did branch off the bottlenose dolphin and name it as a different species. So, it's the genus of both species is Tursiops, and then the offshore dolphin is Truncatus, and then the other near shore species is Arabinus. So that is, I think, what you're referring to is our like newer kind of branched off that old name into a different species. So Tursiops arabinus is the Tamanins dolphin, which is the common name. And yeah, so that is, they're morphologically different, so their anatomy is slightly different, but it's hard to tell just like from the outside. So that's why for most of the presentation, I kind of lumped them together into one species, just to make it the same kind, because a lot of the things that they do, the behaviors, the anatomy is the same. They're just kind of locally different, like the what you considered the newer, like the branched off species, the Arabinus species, are actually going to be our like estuary near shore dolphins. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So exciting.
Yeah, it is. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Carol,
Caroline. Oh, but this is Shayna. I just had a couple of quick questions.
Hey.
One is hey, thank you so much. It was super interesting. One is just on your research in the harbor identifying dolphins. Is there a specific software that you use or database that you guys are using to track the animals? I mean, it seems, you know, super interesting that you can identify them personally, but also very difficult. I'm just wondering what technology you may be using.
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so that I take the photos and then I crop them down and give them like a letter name, and we try to get best left and best right of each dorsal fin. And then after that, I send it to my colleague, and she uses a software called Darwin, and it's a fin dolphin dorsal fin software that actually uses like technology to trace the dorsal fin, and if it has any significant marks on the dorsal fin, it will log that, and then it will match it with one that's previously put in there.
Okay.
And it'll have like a certain number. They don't like name them, but it's like an identification number.
Gotcha. Very cool.
Yeah.
My second question is, so I live on the Folly River and I'm super lucky to get to see some of the strand feeding and it's, just gorgeous. Several times I have, and the first time I saw it, I almost called DNR. I'm like, I have a dying dolphin out here. I've observed dolphins doing this thing where they're sort of like rubbing their sides. They stay on their side for
Mhm.
an extended period of time in the mud. It's almost like they're scratching, or I'm not sure what they're doing. Do you know what they're doing?
Yeah, so a lot of marine mammals do this. Belugas, my favorite, actually do this too in the Churchill River. It's like a dolphin spa. So dolphins actually slough their skin every 2 hours, which is crazy. And so they heal really fast, but it also can sometimes be irritating. It's like, I mean, I don't know how often off the top of my head we shed our skin, right? But like, sometimes we get dry skin and it itches, and like there's just like certain things. And so they experience that too, but it's like more likely because they're sloughing it so frequently. And so they will find, mud or rocks or whatever and just like rub.
Oysters?
Yeah, they would probably
Yeah.
use oysters.
Yeah.
And they just kind of rubbed. The belugas actually use like rocks and like rough things too. So we don't have a lot of rocks, so they probably do use oysters. And they just scratch on that, which is really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Caroline, this is Craig. Just quick question. When you see a dolphin, they almost stand up in the water and then they'll move backwards. Are they just playing, or is that for something purposely to do whatever?
Yeah, yeah. So we used to call that like tail walking. And I'm sure that's kind of like the scientific term for it, but that's kind of similar to breaching, where they just like jump out of the water. It could be for play. It could be if it's a pregnant mama, same kind of thing. They're trying to start birth and kind of elicit that. But yeah, I've also seen that as like a play behavior, which is cool that our dolphins do that.
Looks like
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, it does look like fun. Thanks,
Yeah,
Craig.
thank you.
All right, I'm just going to read Christina's and then we'll call it a night. So thank you for
Okay.
holding on, everybody. Christina had asked, haven't really thought about this. Is the buoyancy in dolphins using lungs similar to what happens with air exchange and buoyancy with gators?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know if I know that much about the buoyancy in gators and like how they do that. So that's interesting. It probably is similar. If I if I'm thinking about it, um, I'm reading it too to see what she said. Yeah. Air exchange probably because I mean our lungs in both reptiles and mammals are similar enough where it does like affect the buoyancy, and that's why I kind of reference the scuba diving, because it's like when you breathe in you actually end up like going up a little bit in the water column. So yeah, I think it probably is very similar, but I would love to look into the what the gators do because that's fun, with the buoyancy. But yeah, what a cool thing to think about. I don't know. That's cool
We'll,
though.
we'll leave it on that mystery and then we can all.
Yeah,
Yes,
thanks.
mystery. Hey.
Thank you all to Caroline. First of all, thank you so much. This was amazing. And thank you all for joining us. And I hope some more of you will register to join Caroline on Saturday at Folly. Again, I put the link in the chat, but it's also on our website. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. And without that, I will, because I know it's already 8:15, I'll let everybody go. And so hope to see you all again soon.
Yeah, thank y'all so
Yay.
much.
Thank
Night.
you.